We will begin our lecture shortly. But before we begin, we kindly once again invite all participants to move forward and fill the front row seat first. So everyone that is still on the second row of the seat, please come move forward. And I believe this will create an engaging atmosphere for our discussion today. Thank you. And now let's officially start our session. Good morning, the Honorable Dean of Faculty of Forestry UGM, represented by the Vice Dean of the Academic and Student Affairs, Dr. Dwiko Budi Permadi. Our distinguished speakers, Dr. Femke Van N, Dr. Ari Susanti, and Dr. Janwillem L. Our esteemed moderator, Mrs. Stevie Vista M.Sc, and here with us today as well, the Forest City Consortium members. I give you the warmest welcome to our campus. And of course, another warm welcome to all participants of today's Studium Generale, both joining online and on-site. Every year, the Faculty of Forestry UGM holds Studium Generale to mark the beginning of the new academic year. And this year, we are delighted to present another remarkable topic and distinguished speaker. Welcome to today's Studium Generale titled Studying Frontiers of Development in Indonesia. It is an honor to have all of you here at the Faculty of Forestry UGM for this insightful discussion. And today's discussion, as you can see in the front, we will have the topic about the studying frontiers of development in Indonesia, which is the part of research called Following Frontiers of Forestry Towards Sustainable and Inclusive Urbanization in Kalimantan and Beyond. Before we proceed, I would like to invite everyone to stand in respect as we sing the national anthem Indonesia Raya. So everyone, please. Thank you, everyone. You may now be seated. Development in Indonesia is a dynamic and evolving field, and it requires a multidisciplinary perspective to address pressing challenges and, of course, opportunities. Today, we are privileged to hear from our distinguished speaker, who will share their knowledge and perspective on this critical topic. So stay tuned for today's lecture to gain full insight and take your chance to give your thoughts, criticize, and fill yourself with knowledge during the discussion session. And before we begin, let me introduce you to our esteemed speaker. Here we have Dr. Femke Van N from the Utrecht University. We have Dr. Ari Susanti from the Faculty of Forestry UGM. And we have Dr. Janwillem L for Utrecht University. We give you the warmest welcome. And we are also delighted to have Mrs. Stevie Vista, M.Sc. from the Faculty of Forestry, who will serve as our moderator for today's discussion. Before we proceed to the lecture and discussion, I would like to invite the Vice Dean of the Academic and Student Affairs, Dr. Dwiko Budi Permadi, to come forward and have the floor to deliver his remarks. And following Dr. Dwiko's remarks, Dr. Dwiko will officially open today's lecture. So please welcome everyone, Dr. Dwiko.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat pagi, salam sejahtera untuk kita semuanya. Good morning and warm welcome to all distinguished guests and esteemed colleagues, dear students. Our honored speaker, Dr. Femke, Dr. Janwillem, and Dr. Ari, and also guest lecturer or our honor partner from Geography, Pak Erlis ya, Pak Erlis, Pak Aris, Pak Puput, Pak Rizky, Mbak Wardah, ya, Mbak Stevie juga, Mas Inu, dan juga para mahasiswa pilihan ya, the chosen students from coming this general studium. And I think on behalf of the Faculty of Forestry, first of all, let me extend my deepest gratitude to all of you for being here today. And it is truly an honor to host this public lecture. And hopefully, the expert from the Utrecht University and the Gajah Mada University will share a very important message and findings from the research about studying frontiers of development in Indonesia. And I think this is related to our national strategic project in Kalimantan, which is IKN development establishments. I think, as you know, maybe there is relaxation and budget efficiency that maybe impact on this IKN development. And not only that, its impact also in our education. That's why today our students protest in our central city, and maybe some of them cannot join us these meetings. And I think that's okay, because part of the learning is criticize our government policy. That's important to improve freedom. Study from Februari Indonesia, but all the frontier development to improve the justice, not only in Java, but also in outer island of Java. Students. Suggest that you can follow this, and then you can ask. And I think for the cooperation with Utrecht or maybe Wageningen to develop a double degree master programs. And I think Utrecht already have an MOU with us, but that's all. And by the name of God, I officially open this Studium Generale. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Dr. Dwiko, for your valuable remarks. And as Dr. Dwiko has said, now to mark the beginning of our lecture session, I would like to give the floor to our moderator, Mrs. Stevie Vista, M.Sc, who will lead the lecture and the discussion session. The floor is yours.
Thank you, everybody. Okay, good morning, everyone. Okay, it's pleasure to welcome you all on today's general lecture, Studying Frontiers of Development in Indonesia. Distinguished Vice Dean of Academic and Student Affairs, Faculty of Forestry, Dr. Dwiko Budi Permadi, honor speaker from Faculty of Geoscience, Utrecht University, Dr. Femke Van N and Dr. Janwillem L. And honor speakers also from Forestry, Dr. Ari Susanti, from Faculty of Geography, Pak Erlis, and we have also Mas Rizky, and our team partner, Pak Fitriansyah, maybe Pak Fitri join online, and all the consortium member and all students that participate this class today. So before we start our lecturing, I will introduce other speakers. We have Dr. Femke, Dr. Janwillem, and Dr. Ari Susanti. Dr. Janwillem L is Assistant Professor at International Development Studies, Department of Human Geography and Spatial Planning, Faculty of Geoscience, Utrecht University. He coordinates the IOS Platform Fair Transition at the university. His research and education focus on role of science and technology, expertise in promoting development intervention in the field of land, water, food, and climate change. He is the author of the book Witness in Engineering, Tracing Technology, Masculinity, and Race in Nepal Development. And today he will use Nepal as a case study to retrace the connection between technology, masculinity, and race in development research and practice, so you can adopt the intersectional approach in thinking about natural resource management. The second one is Dr. Femke Van N, is Associate Professor of International Development Studies and Human Geography and Planning, Faculty of Geoscience, Utrecht University. Dr. Femke is engaged in co-creating research, teaching, and impact around urban housing, new cities, and mega projects, focusing on large-scale urban projects such as a new city in relation to land and housing, as well as innovation and policies in incremental housing and citizen-led urban development. She has worked across Latin America, Africa, Asia, and Europe, co-creating knowledge across the global north and south. She also interests in dimension of migration, tourism, intersectional gender inequalities within the urban dynamic. She is a co-director of the International Development Studies Master Program and teach the Human Geography Planning Bachelor's Program and the Master Programs in IDS and Global Urban Transformation. And the last one, we have Dr. Ari Susanti. She is the lecturer of Forest Management Department, Faculty of Forestry. In this consortium, she also the work package to manager and lead the forest aspect. So for the speakers, please join with me in this floor. So the audience, we will have about 2 hours in this session. Yeah, it will be divided into 2 sessions. Like the first one, Dr. Ari Susanti will start the session to introduce our activities related to this collaboration research. And after that, Dr. Femke, and following by Dr. Janwillem will be teaching for like 30 minutes for each, yeah? And we end the session with a discussion. So for the online participant, maybe during the lecturing, you can write the question for our speakers today, or you can just raise your hand after that. Di online.
Tak lepasin kan jangan tambah lagi ya. Tak masukkan sini ya. Nah, tak lepasin apa ya. Ya, ini makanya ini.
Okay, so Bu Ari, please, the time is yours.
Ini aja. Okay, thank you. I'm trying to log into the Zoom because I have to share my slides. Aku dikasih alat kekuasaan buat share dong. Iya. Wait. So thank you, Mbak Stevie. Can I just stand?
Yeah.
Yeah, and welcome everyone. Good morning. Some of you know me very well from my class because it is integrated. It is a bit different, the subject with the class, the topic we have discussed in the class, but it is related, especially for the assignment. Yeah, so I will start with the overview about the landscape dynamic and challenges for the sustainable development in IKN, in the capital city. So, but then this is one of the, we have a communication product from this consortium. So this is part of the communication product in the book, yeah. And first of all, I want to introduce our consortium, the Forest City Consortium. We have many institutions here, Utrecht University, Universitas Gadjah Mada, we have Faculty of Forestry and Faculty of Geography. Here we have Pak Erlis and Pak Rizky over there. And then IHE Delft, and ITK. ITK we have Mas Aris, and we have Brida, Mas Puput, ya, and Universitas Lambung Mangkurat, Mas Inu, and we have BRGM, Pak Jani ada nggak? Pak Jani online, oke, ya, Pak Jani online, and of course Brida, oh ya, Brida tadi sudah ya, Mas Puput. And we got funding from the Indonesian side of the consortium. We got funding from the Ministry of Education and Higher Education and Research, and LPDP. Yeah, and the Dutch side of the consortium, we got funding from the NWO. The NWO is the Scientific Council of the Dutch government. That is more or less about consortium, and our research area is in the IKN, the new capital city. We focus on the following the impact of the development of the new capital city in Indonesia. Yeah, so this is so I would share a little bit story about from the forestry perspective. So this is the whole project, but we have 7 work packages. So 3 work packages are from Utrecht and IHE Delft, and 4 are in Indonesia. So for example, work package 1 led by Universitas Lambung Mangkurat, Mas Inu there. Work package 2 led by Faculty of Forestry, me. And work package 3 and 4 by Faculty of Geography. So here Pak Erlis, but we have also Pak Professor Rianta, which is not yet here. And work package 5, 6, and 7 managed by Utrecht University. Femke, are you in the work package 7 or yeah? And yeah, we have Fandi. I think he is online, maybe, but he's not here yet. But hopefully he will come. But that is more or less the overview of the work we are doing in Indonesia, or the work of the consortium. Yeah, and okay. So then, now I will start with a little bit concept or I'm from work package 2, so we use this approach, framework, in looking at the IKN development, like how it relates to forestry. Yeah, so we use the socio-ecological framework to see how this social system and ecological system are interacted and produce the outcome. The outcome could be in the natural environment and in the socio-economic and political environment. But then they also not only give impact, but they also influence the process. That is more or less how to read this framework. Yeah. Okay. So the IKN is regulated, the development of IKN is regulated by Law number 3, 2022 on IKN, on Ibu Kota Nusantara. And the vision of this development, they have 3. 1, to become a world sustainable city, to become an economic driver for Indonesian future, and to become a symbol of national identity. But let's see how is the situation right now, and you can think of like how they maybe can achieve the goal, the vision, or most likely or would be likely achieve the goal or not. Yeah, we can discuss that later. Okay, first the forest city. I will look at how this link to forestry. Yeah, the forest city concept based on the master plan of IKN, they will preserve 75% as a green spaces, which is 65% as a natural areas, and 10% for food security and circular economy initiative. So for example, they have like this is the picture I took from IKN last week. Yeah, last week. And yeah, they have like negara rimba raya area that is the forest or the green spaces in the city itself. Yeah, so those kind of things. And okay, so the 75% as green spaces, they plan to achieve in 2045. Yeah, so this is like how many years from now? 16, 18 years from now. So let's see the landscape characteristic. So I want to look at the geographic and biophysical, demographic and economic aspect of the landscape. First, this is by law, yeah, the area of IKN. The red one is the core zone, or we call the IKN area. And the yellow is the development zone, and the blue, like the blue in the is that Makassar Strait, is the water area. So in total is 256,000 hectares. Yeah, but now the development right now is happening in the red area, the core zone, the IKN area, all the palace, all the development, all the buildings, roads, and mostly in the red area. Okay? And let's see, the land cover or land use, 7 watersheds, or maybe 10 now with the sub watersheds, and 40% forest, 29% plantation, 12% shrub, 0.3 rice field, 1% mining, 1% transport and other facilities. And we have only now 40%, yeah, forest. But we have to achieve like 70% in 2045. So we have a gap of 35% of, you can calculate now how much we have to plan or to build the forest every year. Is it, yeah, possible or not? But then, that is this land cover, this is the official figure from them, yeah. But now, we also do the analysis of this land cover and land use change. The forests are decreasing every year, including mangrove forest. And the oil palm, plantation, mining, settlements, and fish ponds are increasing every year. So the challenge to build the forest or to have like 75% of the area as a green spaces is increasing. Yeah. This is the 40%. And it changed rapidly, especially in the development areas. If you look at from the Google Maps, this view, this is the first view from the Google Maps. But then if you zoom, this is already like this. And this is in the gate going to IKN is already like this. Yeah. So it changed very rapidly, especially in the development areas. Okay. So another challenge. We have a lot of things there also, like proboscis monkey, crocodiles, and what is it? Hornbill birds, which are that area are the endemic habitat of those kind of wildlife. The IKN in the master plan, they plan also the corridor, green corridor and wildlife corridor, and But yeah, we still don't know how this will impact this wildlife. This picture I took last week also. I went to IKN. So yeah, this is endemic to proboscis monkey is endemic to is Kalimantan and Kalimantan, and this is buaya muara. Yeah, is also the crocodile is specific crocodile endemic to that area. And climate. Yeah, we talk about climate change all the time, but then this is really like happening there. Like the green area here is more or less the Mahakam Delta area, and if we zoom the Mahakam Delta, it is completely different types of climate with the rest of the Kalimantan. Like the rest of the Kalimantan, especially in the middle of the Kalimantan, it is dark blue. That means it is A. It is very wet and it rains almost every day. I remember I did my internship in East Kalimantan in 1997. Wow, this is a long time ago. I'm old. It rains every day. Yeah. But now like last week I went to Kalimantan. It was like yeah. We have like dry days like more often than rainy days. Yeah, Mas Puput ya. Even it is officially rainy season, right? Yeah. So it's also a challenge. And also, it also could lead to what we call as hydrometeorological disaster. So it has like 46, this is from the BPS, yeah, this is statistical agency, so it is official data, 46 landslides, 36 floods, 29 forest and land fires, 7 extreme weather, 1 tidal waves, and 86,000 affected, and including only 14,000 from the flood, and 100 causalities and 4 fatalities. And also, I think last week, when it was in Samarinda or in in Balikpapan, the flood, banjir. In Samarinda already experiencing flood quite often. Not in the IKN itself, but impact, yeah, the surrounding areas. Yeah, so the demographic, yeah, this is the maybe you have seen this picture everywhere. This is the Jokowi had, our former president, Pak Joko Widodo. He had a meeting with the community leaders in the IKN and to discuss about the IKN development. Yeah, and yeah, the existing population is 165,000 people, and 5 to 10% are indigenous people. But then with the development of IKN, it is expected to add like 1.5 million people to come to that area until 2025. So this is like a rapid demographic change within less than 20 years. Yeah. So I don't know. This will be like Mas Erlis, work package 3, yeah, have a deeper analysis on this, like which group got benefit, with more benefit or less benefit, or even some of them are conflicting, claiming for lands, claiming for resources, and something like that. And the economic, Kalimantan is a lot depend on the extractive industries, especially mining and also like agriculture, but extractive agriculture like oil palm plantation, yeah, mostly. We can see here like the mining, it is, the contribution is increasing. Yeah, but more or less like 40 to 50%. But then, agriculture, only 6%, but mostly from oil palm. Forestry contribute only 1%. How can we build the forest with only 1% of the income? Should have intervention. And how we can stimulate initiative for economic transition to more sustainable economic activities. This is already happening. So on the left side, they use the ex-mining area. So the lake is the ex-mining area. They make like recreational area. So the name of the recreational area is the lake view. So they have like from above, you can have like view to the lake and something like that. And in the lake itself, they have like a jet ski and banana boat and something like that. But I still don't know whether the water is safe enough or not. This is ex-mining. I didn't try the jet ski, but only the view. But it is very nice. But it got a lot of visitors during the holiday. For example, the Imlek holiday at the end of January. Mas Aris was there, with the holiday, and he could, he couldn't even get in. It's very difficult to get in, and also the river cruise. So I did this also last week with the Katamara boat, to see the proboscis monkey. So we had the river cruise, and then in the morning, if you're lucky, you will see the bekantan, like the bekantan in the previous picture. And this is the crocodile nursery in Tritip. I think this is very potential because the price of the crocodile's skin is like €6 per centimeter square. It's very expensive. But only for export. So, but the question is whether this kind of economic activities could then stimulate or could replace the extractive industry. We still don't know. But initiatives are there, but then the magnitude we still don't know. So ecotourism is very prominent topic for Femke and Stevie, I think. And this is the Canopy Bridge. Canopy Bridge was developed since 1997, but then now it is still there, and you can get a very nice view from above. Like this is like 30 meters high. You need to climb, not climb the trees, but you have to climb the stairs to get to the canopy, and then you can walk there. That is the bridge. That's from me. Thank you very much. Maybe that's introduction, to come up to continue with Femke and Janwillem. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bu Ari. Give applause again to Bu Ari. It's a very nice introduction and the insightful explanation about the landscape dynamic in IKN. So we have a clue why the multidisciplinary aspect needs to have to reach the goal of the development of Indonesian new capital city. Okay, so the next speaker is Dr. Femke Van N. For Dr. Femke, time is yours, and give an applause to Dr. Femke.
Okay, thank you very much. Selamat pagi. Thank you so much for inviting me here. Super happy to be here and share with you and discuss with you. Professor Ari presented about IKN and mentioned the role of ecotourism as an important current and potential aspect of the new city development. So I will not talk to you about IKN because there's a lot of experts here that know much better than me, but I will talk about more the general ideas of ecotourism and sustainable development, some academic evidence and ideas about that in relation to development and socio-ecological systems. So, well, this is a very general question, but I will focus especially on sustainability and development debates in relation to ecotourism and tourism in general. So I always like to start with some numbers. You might know a little bit, but this is the global tourism numbers, and then we are talking about international tourists, so people that cross borders for leisure and tourism. And it's, well, as you can see, a very high number yearly. This is a little bit old. I think by now it's gone up even more. There was a little bit of a dip in COVID. Actually, you can see that in the next slides. This is the upper graph is the global tourism arrivals since 2010 up to 2022. You see a very clear COVID dip, but then it really totally recovered again, at least on a global scale, as you can see. Just going back a little bit to talk about the economic impact, because on a global GDP scale, it's also quite big in terms of economic impact, with almost 2% of GDP globally coming from tourism-related activities. So very important, as of course you know, in Indonesia for a lot of different areas. And globally, we have also seen that tourism has diversified from a few very prominent destinations, such as Southern Europe and some destinations in the US. And here you know Bali, of course, which Janwillem has also visited. But it's diversifying, so many more areas in the world are actually being involved in the tourism industry nowadays. So let me go to the policy side of this, because it's also important to realize, and I think here the same thing is going on, that a lot of national governments and international institutions promote tourism growth as a kind of policy prescription to develop regions. This is just one example of the Maya Train kind of regional development initiative in Mexico and Central America, very big infrastructure projects with one of the aims to really put tourism on the map and develop it more. So it's a very high policy push in a lot of areas in the world to develop foreign direct investment in the tourism sector. And for example, also a lot of countries that have re-emerged from conflict have used this as a strategy as well. But what do we need to keep in mind when we talk about tourism and sustainability, just very generally? So I don't know personally a lot about trees. You know much better about forestry. But as a general sustainability issue of tourism, it's often regarded as a very green sector, right? Because it's not mining, it's not extractive in a literal sense. So it's seen as a green sector, but you have to look at the different sides of it in that sense. So there is also a large impact, of course, on CO2 emissions, I will show in a minute. But when you look at very local environmental impact, it's a bit paradoxical. So on the one hand, you could say that a lot of tourism, especially ecotourism, is very dependent on environmental amenities, right? If you lose the forest, if you lose the flora and fauna, you will also lose the tourists because that's what they come from. So you have a kind of intrinsic logic to protect. But paradoxically, also, if you then bring too many tourists, then that will also come to pressure the natural resources. So it is a bit of a balance, a dilemma there, you could say. Some examples of research I did quite long ago for my PhD in Costa Rica and Central America. It was not, Costa Rica is known for ecotourism. I don't know if any of you have maybe heard of it as a kind of always put as an example of ecotourism. But actually there's also a lot of more large scale mass tourism and residential tourism with people buying a lot of real estate and land, foreign tourists buying a lot of real estate and land, which has led to quite some problems. And just here focusing a bit on the environmental issues, is that the main thing is that this is a very dry area, the area on the west, northwest coast where I did research, but then it was filled with buildings and golf courses and that kind of infrastructures. And golf courses, as you may know, need a lot of water spraying all the time to keep them green. So that was really quite destructive of the water sources in the region. So they are overexploited. They are trying to get water from far away now because there is not enough. So then the villages that are in the area where they get the water from, they started also complaining and protesting because their water is being taken for tourism development and they are not benefiting from that themselves. So it's very much a socio-environmental conflict that emerged over water in that area, which was kind of the main debate in terms of environmental impact. But there were also some smaller issues that were often mentioned, like sea contamination because of wastewater being dumped directly into the sea without too much treatment. There was some damage to wetlands. Deforestation was an interesting issue actually because this region had already been deforested quite a bit before for the cattle industry. So there was not that much extra deforestation going on for tourism, but nevertheless some local pockets that's still affected. So environmental issues, yes, a lot here. Just let me move back a little bit to a more general debate on tourism and sustainability. How have academics, researchers looked at this? Traditionally, you might have heard words like carrying capacity, limits to growth was very much in the 60s and 70s, this idea that we have a very clear limit to growth. The area has a carrying capacity that is limited, so we should stick to the limits of the carrying capacity environmentally of that region and then not go beyond that. That sounds very easy and simple. Of course, it's not. But also afterwards, researchers and people working in the industry also started to realize that sustainability is much more complex than just assigning one number of tourists and keeping to the limit. So it's first of all very difficult to give that kind of exact number. But it's also a way of looking, a very purely ecological way of looking that excludes the human, social, political elements of the picture. I will go into that in a bit, but just to explain to you a bit the figure, the tourism area life cycle model, you might have also heard of it, is part of this traditional way of thinking that tourism destinations develop more and more as you get more infrastructure, you get more tourists, we bring more infrastructure, more tourists, and at one point that would lead to a phase where it becomes a bit overdeveloped and the destination would have to either fall into decline or they have to rejuvenate with new technology. So it's very much governance and technology are then posited as solutions to that phase. Whereas in reality, of course, there are no simple technological solutions. We have to think about in a more socio-ecological systems manner. Well, this I already told you, I won't go into it too much, but of course, if we think of sustainable tourism, we don't only have to look at what is happening locally, but we have to look globally at emissions, air transport, and that kind of thing. But I think, well, I'm a human geographer / anthropologist, so for me the human and the socio-economic impact is always also a very important part of sustainability. And so looking a bit beyond just environmental impact, I wanted to say a little bit about current academic debates on tourism and socio-economic impact. Specifically, what does tourism do to poverty? Or poverty reduction, how helpful is it? So in theory, there's a lot of potential, and also sometimes in practice, but in theory at least, tourism is very suitable for remote locations, isolated areas that have few other growth options to then actually have this industry add to employment. It's labor intensive, employing a lot of women, often employing a lot of young people without with low formal levels of education. So very pro-poor, you could say, at least that is the idea. And you don't need the global value chains that you have with industries and agriculture, and so that's you just bring the people there, and that's brings the business. Well, I will actually skip this. It's a bit otherwise I will take too long. But what actually happens with tourism and poverty, we have to look a bit in a complex way at all the different impacts on different industries. So that's where we need a kind of value chain analysis. So what kind of linkages does this tourism industry cause, for example, locally? Do the tourism businesses buy products from local farmers, fishermen? Do they import souvenirs, or do they make their own? So you have the idea is that you want to strengthen the linkages in the regional, local area and prevent leakage towards other areas, like profits flowing out to multinational companies and that kind of thing, right? So that is the idea, to make tourism more pro-poor, reducing poverty. But there's also a lot of literature on then what kind of tourism and how does tourism actually reduce or might it even enhance poverty. So one of them is this article that I put below. If you're interested, you can read it further. It's a systematic review of tourism and poverty. And just to state some of these main findings, because I think it has its limitations, the study, but it also has some interesting contributions. Of course, the impact is always complex and multidimensional, as everything is. And it's important to realize where does the impact take place. Is it a local poverty reduction, or is it a national GDP contribution? Of course, national GDP growth does not automatically trickle down. So very often it's too simplistic to say that it automatically has an impact on actual people. But that depends very much on the types of tourism and the organizations involved and how the tourism is set up. So in general, there is, and this article actually also states the conclusion that eco-tourism, more community-based tourism, cultural tourism is often more contributive to reducing poverty than kind of all-inclusive mass types of tourism, for example. But it has also some nuances about this. So and also domestic and local tourism in that sense was also highlighted as working better than, for example, international tourism, which is also true for sustainability, for CO2 emissions, of course. So there were some of these conclusions about some types of tourism working better than others. We have to still take it a bit critically. It's not true that ecotourism is always beneficial, but at least if you look at this example of the Dominican Republic, maybe some of you might also know, with these all-inclusive resorts and this mass tourism, that obviously often works pretty badly for in terms of anything related to poverty, but also environmental sustainability. This is just very quickly how this is a kind of tourism that concentrates foreign capital, that concentrates power in a few hands worldwide of global tourism companies, and that really doesn't do much for local development. So there was actually a study finding that tourism increased poverty instead of declining it, because jobs that were there were very vulnerable, very insecure. There were few links with real local companies and businesses. And actually what did flourish a lot was prostitution and drugs, unfortunately. That was actually the main economic impact that they found, but that's not really what you want, of course, in terms of enhancing developments. So that was an interesting example of how not to do it, probably. But just coming back to these main findings of the article, and one of the very interesting findings that I also saw in my PhD research is that tourism often has these knock-on effects. So people think maybe it's local, but it's also very much that jobs are being filled by different immigrant groups. In my example in Costa Rica, very much the low-paid jobs were filled by Nicaraguan migrants, whereas the whole real estate industry and the management were like North American migrants. So it was kind of sometimes bypassing local populations. And coming back to this linkage and leakages, and people's aspirations also change. So we have to look at it in that kind of more encompassing way. But I think very important, and I think I'm almost done. I don't know how I'm doing on time. Very important, I think, is that we cannot look at this in a very technical, economic or technological way. We really have to take into account, one is the vulnerability of growth and the vulnerability of labor in this sector also. But the other very important aspect is the resources, the redistribution of water, land, natural resources across different groups in society, and who actually makes decisions on tourism also. So I think this probably for IKN is also something very interesting to look at in terms of the indigenous communities also living there. To what extent are people able to control their resources, access their resources, who controls them, and who makes decisions on this, and how can people be empowered to be included in decision-making on ecotourism. And that requires a very long-term approach, requires an in-depth approach with a real, how do you say, engagement with really community power redistribution. So yeah, I can, I'll mention a few examples here, just of also how it often happens, which is like the tourism sector, like I said, in Dominican Republic, for example, is often dominated by these big consortia of transnational airline, hotel plus tour operator, and then controlling really the whole chain. So that is, of course, what you want to try to prevent. Here you can find a list of these biggest tourism companies worldwide. And another related thing about the redistribution of resources is that tourism is very often related to conservation policies, conservation attempts. And there you have to be very careful about things like whose is the land, whose is the water, is there no land grabbing or water grabbing going on for creating natural parks, for example, how are the resources distributed and controlled. So you have to be very careful with these very real threats of privatization, commodification, and closure of the commons around these tourism areas. Like here's an example of critique of the issue of green grabbings. They called land grabbing for conservation areas. So, very last point, apart from taking into account vulnerability, dependency, distribution of resources and decision making, I think tourism is also very much a part of long-term regional transformations. And that makes it also very difficult to even be critical of it for populations. Like there's this great book that I put here from Matilde Cordoba Azcarate on tourism in Yucatan in Mexico, where it's just really, tourism is so ingrained in the local development, in the regional development for such a long time that people cannot do without it. They need it, they need the work. But on the other hand, they are also very critical of it. So it makes for a very complex, ambivalent kind of situation in that sense. So I think, yeah, I will keep it at this to give also the space for Janwillem. So if you have any questions, I'm very happy to answer them after the lecture. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Femke. Please give applause to Dr. Femke. Yeah, it's very insightful that how ecotourism could support the regional and national economic. It also provides the benefit for social, economic, and conservation. But yeah, the implementation is sometimes bring different stories. So without the concern of the policy and operational control, it would only left the negative impact to the environment, and the promise to gain the livelihood is only a myth. Yeah, it needs to think about the carrying capacity, so it doesn't become the mass tourism, especially in the natural area where the endemic species was live. Okay, thank you for Dr. Femke. So now it's time for Dr. Janwillem to teaching or giving a lecturing for 30 minutes. So take your time. Yeah.
Okay. Well, a very warm welcome. I would like to talk a little bit about cultivating a techno-skeptical attitude. So I would like to pick up on what the Vice Dean has referred to as critical thinking. But what is it, critical thinking? How does it differ from normal thinking? What does it do? And I think it's important to cultivate this attitude in yourself because it helps in understanding development and studying natural resources management. To summarize it, I would like you to understand that you should put forestry or geography first, technology second. But that is not how policymakers are thinking. And that is often not how your engineering colleague students are thinking, or your medicine students. They think technology first. But let's reverse that and see what then happens. And to be clear, I think this is important because in your future you will collaborate with engineers and policymakers, and you need to be able to explain as a forestry student or as a geography student for that matter, what is your added value? So if you study water, if you study forestry, what does it make that you are an expert compared to more technical people? And if you're unable to explain that, you're out of business. So you need to learn to articulate that, and I think that's very important for students to do that. So these are some pictures. Again, it starts with me being a water expert, and when you perhaps closely look at the first slide, you see an abbreviation saying DR, doctor, but I have another one, ER. Do you know what it means? Ingenieur, yeah. So it means that I'm an engineer, so I'm claiming that identity to also say something about technology, but you should critically assess that. But I will not, that means I'm an expert on water. But of course, these issues are related. You can see a watershed with a river. I mean, this is what you know. But here the trouble starts because Erlis is in the geography department and Ari is in the faculty of forestry. This is not good, eh? And this is not good. This is where interdisciplinary learning starts, that you need actually to go over to the other building. Who of you is attending a lecture at the geography department? Can you raise your finger if you've done it? None of you have gone to the geography department. Alice has work to be done. And Ari as well. You need to send your students over and this is where it starts. So I will try to integrate this, but this is separated. Well, this is a bit of my experience, but I will skip this slide. Let's look at a very concrete case. So this is a case from the Philippines where there was a conflict around water. So there was a water company that had been granted rights by the government to source water in a rural area, and obviously farmers were protesting because their wells fell dry. They protested against the government for quite a long time. And then the Department of Water sent in an engineer. And that engineer is called Beatriz Soriano. She is in the middle. What does it tell you? What is your observation here? You can also see the army personnel on the left. This is a situation that you can also find in Indonesia. What does it tell you? And you can speak up.
Raise your hand. Yes.
I have all the time of the world. What do you observe about the identity of the engineer? Is that typical or not? I have a lot of time. This is thinking critically, you know. What is your observation here? I've not even yet talked to people, but I can already observe what is going on here. Well, maybe one of your teachers knows. Erlis, Ari, what do you observe?
Yeah, it's not typically that engineer talks to people. That is one, I think.
It is typical that the engineer is talking to people.
It's supposed to.
It's supposed to happen, and that is often not happening.
Yeah.
So, okay, the Department of Irrigation in this case has made a step forward by actually sending personnel into the field to talk to people. Well, that's a good observation. But what about the identity of the engineer? Say again? Yeah, so engineers are men, right? They're often men. But what is this?
Woman.
Yeah, what's happening here? What's happening? And she is, what is her age?
Very young.
Very young. So what does it tell you about the attitude of the Department of Water? They have a problem, they know it, but they sent in a junior staff member and they sent in a female. What does it tell you about the Department of Water and how they want to treat this problem?
They don't take it seriously.
They don't take it seriously. Thank you, Ari. Right? They try to get away with it. Yes. Okay. Well, this is telling you something about the stereotypes of men, women. A positive perspective. So supposedly women are better communicators than men. Okay. So she can listen to the people, but to me this was evidence that, okay, it's telling me a lot about the Department of Water. In this case, they are not, they tried to get away with it because they sent in a junior staff member, a female, with not so much power yet. And, this is happening all the time. And it shows you that environmental problems, they intersect with gender, they intersect with class, and they intersect with race. So I have written a book on that. Yeah, on Nepal, it's about engineering, but it also uses the word whiteness. Whiteness, my white skin. I have a lot of power in engineering because I'm from Europe, and it intersects with racial hierarchies and with masculinity and race. And race may not be a word that you use so much in the Indonesian vocabulary, but I'm quite sure that you use words like ethnicity, indigenous people, and let me be clear, these words are a stand-in for racial thinking. So it means that your government is also involved in, well, racialized hierarchies and how it is being integrated in policies, and that should be studied. And Indonesia is in that way not an exception, it's found all over the world, but reason to be critical about it. This is a picture from Mozambique, where I've also worked. This is Africa, beautiful. And again, you need to look critically, because what do we see here? You can go into the field, and I think that's important to actually go there, go out of your seats and go to an area. But what do you see here? And I ask this question to a lot of students. And if you know, you can raise your hand. I also ask this question to Dutch students. Anna can tell, yeah, she knows the answer maybe, yeah. No, that's okay, yeah. But a lot of students and a lot of people will say that they see nature. It's like a typical savanna landscape. You know, this is Africa. But again, if you look closely, you can see already crop cultivation going on here. This is maize. You can see it in the front. So when you enter this watershed, this seemingly nature area, you will actually find a heavily intensified irrigated area that is irrigated by farmers, by small farmers maybe, but definitely who also try to sell some of their produce at the market. So they have a commercial orientation. So in the perspective of policymakers, these are people who are modernizing themselves. But when you walk into the field, you will find traditional brushwood dams. And I have also indicated some of the words that engineers and policymakers use when they see this practice. So they call this traditional, even though it might work quite effectively. And they might say, this stone is actually diverting the water to a field. So it's a diversion structure in engineering words, but even though it's very simple technology, but they call it informal or unplanned. I find this always striking because engineers and planners will say this is unplanned. But do you think that this pipe, it obviously was implemented by someone, right? And that person went to the market to buy the pipe, so he planned it and he implemented it to make sure that the water could cross the gully. So there's a landslide and you need to be able to bring water across along the elevation line. So it's not unplanned, but this is how professionals perceive it. And they say small, even though this person in question is putting hours of work in the cultivation of crops. And if you are farming yourself, you may know how much work it can be to make spinach grow like this, and at a level that you can actually sell it at the market. So I could also say this is intensively irrigated agriculture, but they call it small. Unsustainable, and even illegal, because farmers may not have a permit to use the water, right? And the observation that you should make here is, I think, that, okay, what is happening in the field is perceived as negative, as bad, as unmodern. You can now see all the terms as illegal, unsustainable, because this is what they have in mind. Oh, nice. Concrete infrastructure, right? Modern, sophisticated. But I can tell you this technology is often not working as planned. It has high maintenance cost. You can go to your engineering faculty, friends, I assume that are friends, and they are trained to design this, but at the same time, these systems often run into problems because they also make a lot of assumptions about how society is supposed to work in the design of the technology. So, for instance, the outlets are designed for 1 hectare plots. But what happens if a farmer will split the plot because he passes away and he wants to pass on the plots to his son or his children, then they need to cultivate half-hectare plots. Well, there goes the functioning of your system. You need to create additional outlets or start manipulating, fiddling around with it. And that is happening also. But this is still sort of the golden standard. This is what we want. And I think we can also see that in the development of the forest city. You know, this is what a super green, energy-friendly city should look like, based on modern, centralized, and efficient, supposedly sustainable technology. So be critical about that. And you can find examples of this all over the world. This is from the New Manila airport. I will skip this part. A lot of dredging is going on. And interestingly, even when resistance is organized well, so in this case, this is in Manila residents who are organized by an NGO. They even manage to come on the radio. They have connections with local level government officials who might pass on their protest with higher levels of governance. What worries me is that often when resistance is organized well, then still plans will proceed and continue. So I try to be optimistic here, but it is also difficult. And again, there is an important intersection here with race and gender, because the leaders of activist movements, the leaders of protest movements, they are disproportionately represented by women, by people from so-called ethnic and indigenous groups. These are people that were killed last year by police forces, by gangs. And this is also happening in Indonesia, of course. And this should be really an issue of concern, because these people give voice to alternatives of development, to protest actions, but they pay with their lives. And this is, of course, ongoing. I mean, I've symbolized it with these squares. You know, there will be a next generation of environmental activists that will probably be murdered. And this is about, around mining, extractivism, but also city expansion and so on. So what I'm trying to do in my work is to move, I now adopt a bit of academic language. I try to move beyond disciplinary binary thinking and try to integrate an analysis of environment, technology, and gender, masculinity, inspired by feminist theory, using mixed methods. And I will talk a little bit about that for the next 5 or 6 minutes, and then open the floor for questions, I think. Because it is, what do I mean with mixed methods is, okay, yes, you need to study books and you need to study articles, but you also need to go out and actually observe what is happening in reality. So that is what I will also do in the next week. We will go to IKN and actually start and observe ourselves what's happening, talking to local people, people who are involved in the construction, people who try to make a living there. So to collect different information from different positions, from different actors, and then start to integrate it with the information that we have. For instance, the information that Ari presented about land cover, about the status of biodiversity, and see what we can say about it. And why is it important? And I also want to pick up here on what the Vice Dean is saying. You know, we need to democratize science. So science is not an innocent activity. It's not an innocent practice. You may also start to work for the government, and you have just heard that you need to criticize government as well. So this is a critical stage in your life that you can actually develop that attitude with a view to arrive at a more sustainable and fair world. Yeah, okay, maybe this slide I will talk a little bit about. So when you're talking about feminist-inspired analysis or critical analysis, you need to operationalize it. Okay, what does it mean? And I do it in the following way. So you can either go to the field and you can study grassroots dynamics projects. So I will travel to the IKN area. That is a project, and I will study it. And I can ask a lot of questions about who is doing what, how are households organized, what is happening with the project. I call that studying down, because we as professionals go down to the field and study what is happening. Yeah, and you can ask interesting professional or feminist-inspired questions. But there are two other levels, and that is the level of professionals. And you are future professionals. I'm a professional. So I'm operating at the professional level. Universities, governments, NGOs, all sorts of organizations that are developing plans, for projects, for the field. But of course, that world is also gendered, right? We are not in a neutral space. So that world is also gendered, so you can also ask feminist questions about that level. How is the university organized? Why is it that the engineering department has only male students? Very funny question, but difficult to answer. And then the highest level is, okay, you can also think about knowledge, technology, or science itself. The level of knowledge, you can also think of it, okay, that level is gendered, and you can ask questions about it. So what is presented as truth? What is presented as science and what as social science, and based on what criteria? Yes? But when you look with a feminist lens of analysis, what is happening is that the questions at the upper levels are often black boxed. We don't like to ask those questions, and you can sort of understand why, because it means that we need to ask questions about ourselves. We need to ask difficult, critical questions about our own positionality, and it is way easier to leave that outside, to leave that away. Yeah? We can just ask questions about a project, that's fine, but we don't want to bring it to ourselves because that's a problem. So there's a sort of blindness, you could say. And I think it is also racialized. So when you go back in history, you can trace it to a sort of colonial tendency of how science was introduced in places like Indonesia. And that whiteness is blinding us. It's like light in your face. You cannot really see it. Studying down, I've called it, so I would like to study up actually. So one example that I can give, so this is in India, and I would go and visit the irrigation department here. You can see the building, a big bureaucracy, a state department, and I would end up talking with engineers. And the first question they would ask me is, are you an engineer? Right? Are you a real engineer? Implicitly asking me, are you a real man? Do you have the real knowledge? Do you know, can you do what it takes? And that's an interesting question from the level of professional. Why is that so important? Why is it so important for these other people that they ask that question first to me? And it has to do with the politics of water knowledge. It has to do with the politics of engineering, and by implication the politics of development. Who is entitled to call himself or herself an engineer, and based on what knowledge? And in the water sector, that's clearly linked to engineering. So when I say that I'm a geographer, it means that I cannot be a water expert, because a water expert, that can only be engineers. Yeah? So that is already the struggle that I'm having in communicating with engineers, and they put it right in my face when I've just entered the department. And they talk about dams and how high the dam is, how much water it can store. That's the topic they like to discuss. And of course, these hierarchies are everywhere, because I said you can trace them back with a colonial perspective. So these are pictures from the Netherlands, where we have an informal categorization saying that, okay, there is true engineers and they focus on hardware, right? And that is at TU Delft, Technical University Delft in the Netherlands. And I am trained at Wageningen, and those people are known in the Netherlands as soft engineers because we are trained to talk with people, farmers, and plants. We work with living material and not just with concrete and water. Well, water is also life, of course, but so there's this hierarchy that is also there. And I think as forestry students and geography students as well, you often are trained to look into the future. So your education is decisively future-oriented. I think part of feminist analysis and why it's so important is also to develop a sensitivity for historical research. So when you develop your thesis, you might also, in addition to studying what is happening in the present and what might happen in the future, you also need to look back. And it is worthwhile doing that. And one way of doing it, and then I will conclude my lecture, is by looking carefully at photos that might exist about a certain area, and then trying to apply a sort of a feminist analysis. So I've done that in a particular area in Nepal, called the Terai, and the Terai is basically a forested plain area that is part of the Ganges watershed. So it's basically a piece of India that is extending into Nepal, hitting the Himalayan mountains. And that area was a malaria-infested, heavily forested area that was only accessible for a certain time of the year during the summer. And then the royalty, the Ranas called in Nepal, they would go there and hunt tigers on elephants. And they would do so by inviting the British royalty. Of course, India was a British Indian colony. They would invite the royalty to shoot tigers. And you can sort of see the words that I've used to explore the racialized hierarchy. And then you can trace it. You can see that the start of development was there. So the Americans came. They started to open up the area, and I think much of this is happening now in the forest city. And focusing on technical assistance, and also implementing two non-integrated streams of development thinking. So social sciences on the one hand, and technical applied disciplines on the other. So you also now are you see the introduction of the disciplinary hierarchies. And there's a sort of a social Darwinian view on development. So people are primitive because they don't have the technology. They use only their hands. And when you give them technology like tractors, the idea is that people can modernize themselves and lift themselves out of poverty. And I think this is a type of linear thinking that is still very prevalent in policy packages and policy thinking. But it basically started in the 1950s and 60s, and it is still there. And it created new middle-class professions, leading to plant development, as you can see, and what we now know as engineering masculinities. In Nepal, they also have a conflict, the Maoist conflict. Indonesia had its own share of conflicts. Often these are about class, ethnic, and gender inequities that are politicized. And it has to do with this history of development. And these are pictures of recent date where you can see that, engineering masculinities don't work. It requires basically a more open attitude of the government to go out, and then the Minister of Irrigation in this case is visiting infrastructure and see what it can do to help facilitate the people. So the engineer becomes sort of a development facilitator in this case, seeking to restore its image. I will go to the last slide. So I've given a brief example of how you can use photo analysis to do such historical analysis and to link it to present day studies on technology, and for instance, in relation to the forest city. And I hope it helps you to, well, basically, develop a more technical, skeptical attitude, and create a clear view of your own professional contribution to development in general, with the line in mind, putting forestry and geography first and technology second. And I would like to stop there.
Okay, thank you for Dr. Janwillem L. Yeah, it's a really different perspective. Yeah, we are learning many things today. We are not only about forestry, but also the sustainable development, especially in tourism, and it's part of the development, and also the critical thinking, the techno-skeptical. Yeah, because we are, it's a archipelagos and a big country. We have a lots of ethnicity, race, and the culture. So yeah. Okay, so coming to the next session, I open the discussion and open for 3 questions. If you want to ask to Bu Ari, Dr. Femke, or Dr. Janwillem, you can raise your hand. Or in the online participant, Pak Fitri, maybe want to ask something? Or, okay, you first.
Thank you for the presentations that you guys have given today. My name is Aryo Damar Muhammad Jati. You can call me Aryo. I'm from Master Degree program of Forestry, and I would like to touch on the ecotourism that was presented by the Dr. Femke. But first, I would like to take the perspective of ecotourism development back to the IKN. As in the early presentations, Dr. Ari has stated that ecotourism is an alternative of economy source for the local communities in the future. And related to that, Dr. Femke present about how ecotourism has both good and less of a good sides. By giving example of what happened when ecotourism is strongly influenced by foreign investment, where it ended up bypassing the local communities to reduce the basic problem, which is the poverty itself. My question is, IKN is currently still in the early development. The needs of capital still high to develop not only the city, but also the ecotourism industries. Is there any predictions or indicators as what condition where capital investment should be limited so it will not capitalize the local ecotourism industry, assuming that it will bypassing the local communities itself? And furthermore, speaking about forecasting, when will this possibly happening with the current growth of IKN development? I think that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mas Aryo. Okay, maybe we can go to the next questions.
Okay, thank you for the insightful presentation. Honestly, I'm very interested in sustainable things and so on. And at first, I want to ask Dr. Femke, but I think this is also related to Dr. Janwillem. You talk about sustainability, you talk about technology. In your opinion, what is the right or what is the best strategy to achieve a sustainable way of life? Because I think the problem lies in consumerism. Would behavioral change or technological advancement be the key to achieving sustainability? Because, for instance, if we massively transition to electric vehicles, their production still require petrochemical, right? Which clearly contribute to emissions. What are your thoughts on that?
Okay, thank you, Mas Yuka. Another questions? Okay. The last question before Dr. Femke and Dr. Janwillem answer the questions.
All right, thank you for the opportunity. First, I'll introduce myself. My name is Mirza and I'm from the same program as Arya said. My question will be first the representation of Dr. Janwillem. I'm quite interested with the thing about integrating race, gender and masculinity. And as we know that Indonesia is a diverse multicultural country, and I hope you can, when you go to IKN, you can see how diverse it is. And it's kind of different between each region and other regions about the social life and how the management unit should be created. Do every region has to be the same unit management, or is there something that should be divided? What kind of thing that's divided? Maybe based on the social life, or based on the cultural itself, or etc. Maybe you can explain it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mbak Mirza. Okay, I don't know which one. Maybe Janwillem first, and then Dr. Femke. Okay. Which one?
Okay, I'll respond to two questions. Yeah, maybe give one answer. So I'll summarize it. The first question was on sustainability, right? Well, for me, you were already asking a techno-skeptical question, so I was very happy, because that is exactly what you should do. Because the promise of industry and the promise of the government is that we can innovate ourselves out of the crisis. I call that techno-optimism. And I can understand why they say it, because they want to tell us a story of hope. They want to tell us they have a grand vision of modernity. And they will say, well, with technology we can solve many of the problems. But of course, by saying that, you deny, or you sort of look away from the complexities that, okay, sustainability questions are political questions. And with that, I mean to say, whatever decision you make or whatever proposal you make, there are winners and there are losers. So yes, when you go for electric cars, the winners might be consumers. The people who can buy the cars, they are now maybe urban consumers because they have less exhaust, cleaner streets. But at the same time, there are losers because some of the critical minerals, the metals that need to be extracted from mining areas, these people lose out. Yeah, so that's a political question, and I'm not in a position to say what is good or bad here. I'm not God. So but I think we need to be very explicit about those questions and about integrating a political analysis into sustainability questions, and be very critical about whatever technology is promoted to us, sold to us as the solution, right? And one other thing that I would like to say is that, technology, again, in the mind of scientists and engineers, technology is a clearly defined area of study. It's about hardware, it's about mathematics, and it's about artifacts. Yeah. But technology, when you study it more from an anthropological point of view, it means going out to people. It means going out to farmers, what I illustrated. How do they use local materials? How do they use resources with their own hands? How do they make their own investments? So in the forest city, we talk a lot about investments, but it is only about capital investments from outside. But there are, of course, also investments made by people themselves. You are investing in this lecture because you are spending time here, right? That is your investment. And I can, of course, deny that and say, well, that's not really investment, but that is, I think, a misrepresentation of what is happening. So look at how people themselves are using technology, how they do it, and then you observe that technology is always, per definition, socially and politically embedded. And that needs to be recognized and it can be studied, and then you can also engage more productively with the questions that you post, like, okay, should we go for electric cars or not? Yeah? So that would be my approach of dealing with that question. Then the question on ethnicity and the diversity of Indonesia and how to work with that. Yes, I'm looking forward to go to IKN and see the diversity of Indonesia. I've read a lot about it. Again, just to explain about Nepal, Nepal has more than 120 ethnic groups. So it's also an extremely diverse country. People are Hindu, are Buddhist, are Muslim, Christians as well. They have you have the Terai groups and the Tibetan Himalaya groups. So they have very different cultural practices. But when you look at the government is dominated by only a few ethnic caste groups, what I would call upper caste Hindu, Bahun and Chetri groups. They may control 50-60% of the government positions. And by implication, because they control the government, they are also associated with modernity. So that is what I mean with the racialized hierarchy. And I think that is also there in Indonesia. Yes, there is diversity, there is regional differences. But at the same time, there is the dominance of Java, right? In the political landscape of Indonesia, and that is creating problems for other groups. And again, my approach to solving that delicate question would be, rather than me saying what should be done, is to go out and ask people, representatives of various groups, what is it that you would like to do? How do you see inclusion? What does it mean for you to have a fair democratic government? Would you like to be regionally independent or autonomy, or what type of development would you like? And I think going out and bringing in those voices rather than killing activists would be a better approach. That would be my take, because I'm from the Netherlands and I'm not in a position to comment on particular groups. That is not what I would like to do, but I hope this is helpful. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Very interesting questions. Following up on Janwillem's very good points about the question on technological advancement versus behavioral change. Great question. The electric cars are also a great example indeed. And this is exactly the techno-skeptical approach that I would also agree with, that we should not think that climate change is going to be solved by technology, because new technology is also being pushed and creating new winners and losers and creating these translocal knock-on effects on other areas, which have to be where resources are extracted, new resources are extracted. So we have to see this a bit in the whole global inequalities, global extractions, global inequalities in terms of climate change and its solutions. So we should keep that in mind, that what might be a solution for the already rich countries, that they're like us, that we can drive electric cars, can definitely enhance extractivism and damage in many other areas. So that is something to be very critical of. Then the question of ecotourism in IKN. Well, I think I will leave it to Ari about IKN specifically, because I don't know enough about the projections and the ideas there. But in general, how to prevent foreign domination, I think, was a bit the question. How to prevent that it goes kind of the wrong way in that sense. I think IKN is such a complex project, right? It's an urbanization project, so ecotourism is only one element of it. So I think we have to also see it in the whole picture of the whole new city and the actors being involved there, and the government and private actors and communities being involved there, and so that comes back to the same issue of the communities, right? And the diversity of the communities. What do they actually want? Do they like to be engaged in ecotourism? In what way? How can it then be developed in such a way that they really have a voice and decision on it? That requires a long-term participatory approach, I would say. And being aware of building these local linkages and trying not to, trying to enhance the linkages instead of the leakages, but especially really looking at what they want and the resources that they have and how they want to deal with that. But I think that goes much beyond ecotourism. It goes for, it's an issue that has to be dealt with for the whole new city, of course. But maybe Ari, you can add to it.
Yes, thank you. Mas Aryo ya. Yeah. Okay, thank you, Mas. Yeah. IKN is in the very early stage of the development, yeah. So that's why this consortium is following the impact of the development of IKN. So our project is starting in 2021 or 2022, yeah, and then for the Indonesian side consortium, this will be like the last year, but then for the Netherlands side of consortium, it will be 2026 will be the last year. But yeah, and we have many collaborators and we have many partners, national, international, and even local. But then we still have a lot of questions. Yeah, and I cannot answer your question like how it will be in the future. Yeah, but we welcome you if you want to join and to do the research about that. Yeah, so I mean, it is still very dynamic, and we still don't know. Like there are many initiatives, like the mangrove center in Geraha Indah, for example. It is managed by the community. It is also also for example, the ecotourism initiatives in IKN area or surrounded IKN area, they are very diverse. There are many community initiative, but also there are support from the private companies, but also support from the government. For example, the Lakeview, it is a big investment because it is supported by the mining company itself, and also for example, the Canopy Bridge. It is supported by the government and also by the company, the ex-logging company there, the Inhutani Satu. And even the Geraha Indah Mangrove Center, it is operated by the local community, the group of community, but then they also receive support from the several companies and also from the Ministry of Forestry with the facilities also. So it is difficult to say, like to conclude how or which which type of ecotourism should be there, or it is very difficult to say that right now. That's why I think Stevie will do research on that, on the ecotourism in IKN and East Kalimantan also, related to the development of the IKN. And if you are interested on the topics, or anyone in this room and in the online interested to do research or join this consortium, very welcome. That's what I can say.
Okay, thank you. We open the next discussion again. From online participant, is there any questions? No, yeah. We have limited time, yeah. Okay, so since we have limited time, maybe I can try to wrap the discussion for today. So at the start, we learn from the Bu Ari presenting about the landscape dynamic, and we know that the gap between the existing forest cover and the forest city goal is around 30%. So to achieve that goal of the government, we need to have a more study not only for the environmental aspect but also the social and economic aspect to balance its development from the environment aspect, since IKN lies in the non-free disaster risk. And we have to prepare the mitigation physically and socially. And as you know, that the economic of the East Kalimantan mostly supports by the mining and industry, so it's aligned to reach the ambition of the forest city. It needs to diversify the economic support, like green or blue sectors, to reach the goal of the sustainable city. We also could use the techno-skeptical attitude, use your critical thinkings that combine not only the traditional knowledge and technology, but also integrated the gender, masculinity, race, and our rich ethnicity. And so, it's a very insightful discussion. We have a different perspective, not only in a forestry point of view, but also for geographer and the engineer, and about this social study. Okay, so maybe before we close this session, Dr. Janwillem said he will give this book from the best question, so you can pick which one the best question is.
Who wants a book? Well, then you...
Oh, that's the fastest, so you will have the book. Oh yeah, we have another one. Oh, okay. Okay, this book can you take later? Okay, so before we close this session, maybe Dr. Janwillem and Dr. Femke, also Bu Ari, can give a closing statement, like a message for the student and participants to, promote the critical thinking or something. Yeah, please.
Well, remember, put forestry and geography first, technology second.
What can I add to that? Keep thinking, keep observing as you do your research, as you go ahead with your studies. Just keep really thinking critically about everything you see and hear, and develop your own perspective. So good luck with your studies.
Yeah, what can I add? Keep going to the field and you will see many things. I mean, the field is you learn a lot from the field. Okay, you learn a lot from the class, but also, it is more from the field. Yeah, okay, I think that's all.
Thank you for all the speakers. Give applause to praise them. Okay, so it's the last. I will give the time back to the Miss Nilo Wijaya as the MC. Thank you.
Thank you. Give another round of applause, everyone, for our speakers and moderator. It's such an engaging and I believe you guys also inspired as I am. And I do hope you take notes on that, especially the closing statement. It is very inspiring indeed for me. And as we come to the end of the session, I would like to once again thank you very much for our esteemed speakers and to our moderator, Mbak Stevie, to facilitating this engaging discussion. And for the participants, we hope today's session has provided meaningful perspective and deeper understanding on our topic today. And we encourage all of you to continue explore, do research, keep on being uncomfortable, keep on going to the field, and so on. Before we officially conclude today's event, I would like to present souvenirs from our speakers from the Utrecht University. So, Bu Ari, yes. So I would like to invite Dr. Janwillem and Dr. Femke to come forward, and Dr. Ari as well to present the souvenirs.
Thank you, Stevie. Yeah. Let's take picture together. Let's take picture together.
Yeah, first for the speakers, and then we can take a picture with the participants later. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, cheese. Okay, once again, 1, 2, 3. Thank you. Yes, and then we invite all the participants to come forward so that we can take our documentation for today's session. Yes. Yes, please, everyone, please come forward for us to take our documentation. Thank you. Come on, everyone, please come forward. Yes, everyone, please come forward. Coba dicek ini. Kelihatan nggak, Mas? Mas, kelihatan nggak? Kalau di sini kelihatan nggak? Kalau di depan TV kelihatan. Oh iya. We will move the TV so that we can have a more space. Yeah, probably we will have 2 rows. So the first row will be in the front, and then the second one will be on the upper stair. You can go here. Yes, yes, please. Yes, please come to the center. We have a lot of people here. Yeah. L pose. Okay, we will have the L pose. Thank you, everyone. You may come back to your seat. And thank you for joining us for today's lecture. Yes, on behalf of the organizing committee, we sincerely apologize and appreciate your participation. And we apologize for the inconvenience that may occur during this lecture. Thank you for your time and enthusiasm. We look forward to seeing you in future events. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.